Hey everyone, thank you for joining me for this recording of Artificial Intelligence in the Arts, Threat, Collaborator, or Tool. Like many of you, I'm super curious about AI and specifically how it relates to the arts world. And I had a lot of fun putting this presentation together. So let's let it go. Let's let it rip. So if you don't know me yet, I'm Louisa Higgins, and I'm lucky enough to be the Arts Administrator for Riverside County Office of Education. And I'm also a practicing artist and poet. And here's a picture of me doing my thing. And I have to tell you that my initial reaction to AI was run. But I have also challenged myself to learn and grow, which led me to creating this presentation. I'm an arts expert, but I'm not an AI expert yet. So I am committed to learning and staying current, and I hope you are as well. I found this quote, this old chestnut, appropriate. We've all probably heard it a million times about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery. And the writer George Bernard Shaw also said it's the sincerest form of learning. So that kind of fits into what's happening with AI right now. However, as you'll see later in the presentation, if you're a creator and your work is being used without permission, it doesn't, or credit or payment, it doesn't feel very flattering. So that's one of the issues that we're having. So my agenda that I intend to cover in this presentation is basically AI in an arts-specific context, some basics about AI, in case you're not there yet, some considerations for us as educators, and also where do we go from here. One of the things I delved into when I was exploring AI is some of the science fiction novels, short stories, and films that feature AI. You may have seen this film, I, Robot, when it first came out in 2004. Let's check out this clip.
I had hoped you would come to think of me as your friend. This is my dream. You're right, Detective. I cannot create a great work of art. This is the place where robots meet. Look, you can see them here as slaves to logic. And this man on the hill comes to free them.
Sonny, do you know why Dr. Lanning built you?
No. But I believe my father made me for a purpose. We all have a purpose. Don't you think, Detective? Please, take this. I have a feeling it may mean more to you than to me.
Okay, so how many of us can render a drawing as well or as fast as that robot? That's why there's a bit of a freak out on the part of artists like myself.
I had hoped you...
So let's get into some background on AI. These are just some of the popular apps now available, and the list is growing by the week. Our own EdTech department, RCOE, I think has about a dozen apps so far that they have vetted and they think are reliable and worthwhile. So these are just a few, and I want to acknowledge that new things are almost always initially threatening, and I'm going to point out some examples in the arts that were first not well thought of and eventually came to find their place in the arts world. And I think the trick for us at this point in time is to educate ourselves as much as possible and as quickly as possible so that we can become savvy users of AI. Generative AI works through a process known as diffusion. This involves harvesting huge data sets that AI then uses to train and then devise all new content. The process is sophisticated enough that you can even incorporate the style of a given artist when you're producing a requested product. So I want you to understand that process of diffusion in generative AI. And DALL-E 2 is one of those apps that I just referenced, and it's known as a black box. So when you have black box, that means it's code and the data used to train it are not revealed to the rest of us. There's also a new tool that's been devised called Have I Been Trained? And this tool allows artists to research and find out if their work has already been used and training sets. So that would be good to know. Here's a clip I found and I wanted to share with you, which is based on a popular song. And all of the art that accompanies it is AI generated. So I invite you to pay attention to what images are successful and where does AI fall short of capturing the meaning and the intent of the song Mr. Blue Sky. So here we go.
Why you had to hide away for so long? Where did we go wrong? Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go wrong? Celebration, Mr. Blue Sky's up there waiting, and today is the day we've waited for. Oh, Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go wrong? Hey there, Mr. Blue, it's a place to be with you. Look around, see what you do. Everybody smiles at you. Hey there, Mr. Blue, we're so pleased to be with you. Look around, see what you do. Everybody smiles at you. Mr. Blue Sky, Mr. Blue.
So I think you get the idea. And I've watched this several times now, and I'm always struck by there's a lot of shrouded figures, and I don't know if that's what AI interpret as hiding, and things that look like ghosts. So I found that odd. So you can see in some cases it gets it really right, in some cases not so much. So that's kind of wild. All right. So who predicted AI? And actually quite a few people going way, way back. And so the first one I want to reference is Isaac Asimov. So he's the one who gave us that story, I, Robot, and the 3 rules of robotics. So rule 1 is a robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. Number 2, a robot must obey orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And law 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So pretty interesting. Then we have the 9 billion names of God, which examines what happens when all of the names are finally spoken via the help of AI. And by the way, Isaac Asimov's book was 1950. The 9 billion names of God was 1953. And in 1949, we had With Folded Hands, which imagines robots that have become so protective of humans that they become like pets or children. And then, of course, you have the films like The Matrix and the Terminator series, which I have up there on screen. So one of the things I would like to point out is that our current ways of talking about AI are not good enough. We really need to better understand our perceptions about the generative process. And we need to embrace more transparency, like I mentioned, the black box, so less of that, around the generative process when AI is involved. So it's not a mystery, it's not a secret. When it comes to aesthetics, which is how things look, and culture, we need to remember how past technologies were first developed and regarded in the beginning. So, for instance, photography. It was very much frowned upon in the art community when it first came along. Now it is a commonly used art practice. So, in what ways might our thinking about AI and the arts evolve over time? There are lots of issues around ownership and credit, and today's copyright laws are not up to date. So how are we going to amend those to make them fair and remunerative? In what ways will AI impact labor, economics, and creative work with a technology that's so much faster than humans? Does it make us obsolete? So like in the iRobot video clip I showed you, where that drawing was produced in a matter of seconds, not hours. I'm going to skip over this because this is what we did in the live session. Basically, I was asking people, you could stop for a moment and think about it. As an educator, what is most on your mind right now regarding AI, your students, and the future of education? So that is something certainly worthy of thinking about. So here are some more questions to reflect upon as you start to form your own opinions about AI and the arts, so that you can then figure out how best to manage it. So on the left, I have an image that was created through AI software. And then the questions about, does creating and generating mean the same thing? Is anything ever truly original? Does having a soul, like being human, depending on your beliefs, have a role in creating? And what does it mean to be creative and original? So let's take a look at some real-world examples in the arts. This first video features auto-tune, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. Let's hear how this new technology, well, actually not so new anymore, but relatively new, and how it's played out, pun intended, over time. So isn't that interesting? A technology, an AI technology that was developed by accident and really poo-pooed at the beginning by the music industry. Oh, we're not using that. Now virtually everyone uses it. So love it or hate it, you can see this has become an integral part of the music world. And so autotune changed many long-held notions about how we could arrange and produce music. However, it does not significantly affect the performance of live music. Yeah, that cannot be replaced. And computers don't currently have the ability to improvise or surprise like in jazz, for instance. And then something else I was thinking about that has evolved over time was sampling. And so you might have heard of the song that's up on top, Coolio, Gangster's Paradise, which was very, very popular when it came out. And then pretty recently, I was listening to a song on the radio, and I thought, oh, Stevie Wonder liked that song so much that he replicated it. And of course, it's actually the opposite. So I'm just going to play a little bit of Stevie Wonder's original song called Pastime Paradise.
Been spending most their lives living in a pastime paradise. Been spending most their lives living in a pastime paradise. Been wasting most their time glorifying days long gone behind. Been wasting most their days in remembrance of ignorance, so dispraise. Tell me who of them will come to be? How many of them are you and me? Dissipation, grace relations, consolation, segregation, dispensation, isolation, exploitation, mutilation, mutation, miscreation, confirmation to the evils of the world, and spending more.
Okay, so that's the incredible song that Stevie Wonder made back in 1976. And then it got a second life through Coolio's version, which I'll play a bit of here.
You want to tell me what this is all about?
As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life and realize there's nothing left. Cause I've been blasting and laughing so long that even my mama thinks that my mind is gone. But I ain't never crossed a man that didn't deserve it. Me be treated like a punk, you know that's unheard of. You better watch how you're talking and where you're walking, or you and your homies might be lined in chalk. I really hate the trip, but I gotta low. As they croak, I see myself in the pistol smoke. Fool, I'm the kind of G the little homies wanna be like, on my knees in the night, saying prayers in the street light. Been spending most of their lives living in the gangster's paradise. We've been spending most of their lives living in the gangster's paradise. We keep spending most of our lives living in the gangster's paradise. We keep spending most of our lives living in the gangster's paradise.
So it's interesting to see that this song was amazing the first time around, and then also the second time around. And what happened here as far as sampling was there was an agreement between Stevie Wonder and Coolio, and they actually, you can look up recordings of them playing it together before Coolio's death. So sampling was something that, like I said, wasn't well regarded, but when people were able to work things out and proper credit was given, then it was possible. So that's a positive example that just came up in the last couple of weeks. The Beatles, the remaining Beatles, which are Paul and Ringo, found some old recordings, and they used AI to clean up the vocals for John Lennon, and they came out with this video, which I'll play a bit of here.
One, two, three.
Okay, so you get the idea. And critics of this practice were like, well, that's weird, because, two of them are not living anymore. And why do you want to do that? I know a lot of people feel very nostalgic about the Beatles. And so this was a joy that they were able to bring this music forward after working with some AI and the cleanup of the vocals. So for music, I have the question down at the bottom that we'll ask time and again in this presentation. Are auto-tune, sampling, or cleaning up old vocals, is that a threat or a collaborator or a tool in terms of how we're using AI? All right, so let's talk about the visual arts, and my title is cut off just a tad bit here. But here's on the left is a visual arts example of a person who generated an art piece using Midjourney and then won first place in an art competition. And, I'm looking at that image. It is rather pleasing. He named it Théâtre d'Opéra Spatial. And as someone who regularly holds competitions for students and often participates in judging them, how does this create a new challenge, particularly when working strictly online? So for visual arts, we have to consider, is AI a threat or a collaborative situation, or is it a tool? Let's talk about the literary arts, i.e. creative writing. I'm sure you have heard that many of the issues around AI were part of what caused the writer's strike that shut down our movies and TV shows for quite some months. Guidelines had to be hammered out about just how much AI would be allowed before the writers would actually come back to work. And in doing my research on various articles on the subjects, these are some of the key differences cited between human versus AI writing. And again, as someone who oversees both spoken word competitions as well as the Teen Poet Laureate every year, how do I factor in AI when I'm judging student writing, other than having the students certify that their work is indeed original? Here's a clip about some of the world's leading authors and how they are pushing back on how their work is being used by AI without permission, payment, or credit.
Now, the lawsuit targeting the company behind ChatGPT, a group of prominent authors is suing the AI pioneer, accusing of copyright infringement. Chief Business Correspondent Rebecca Jarvis has that story. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning to you, George. And while ChatGPT can be a great resource for research and idea generation, these authors see it as a huge threat to their livelihoods and creative workers' livelihoods more generally, because it's actually learned from their books without compensating them.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
This morning, a Game of Thrones erupting over the rights to some of the most popular works in the world.
Winter is coming.
George R.R. Martin and more than a dozen other authors now suing OpenAI, creator of ChatGPT. Martin joining forces with authors like Jodi Picoult, John Grisham, Ellen Hilderbrand, Michael Connelly, and David Baldacci to take on the AI giant, claiming it used their books to train its ChatGPT bot without their permission and without compensation.
My son said, "Hey, Dad, come over here." And he put in a request to ChatGPT. There were 3 pages. It sounded like a lot of books that I'd written with names of characters that I'd used in the past. And I thought, oh my God, I feel so violated. It was like someone had just taken my entire library without my knowing it.
The lawsuit filed with the Authors Guild claims that OpenAI reproduced copyrighted books without the author's consent to train ChatGPT, allowing it to produce derivative works, material that's based on, mimics, summarizes, or paraphrases the author's work and harms the market for them.
If you can automate this, then you can pretty much automate everything, and no one will have a reason to get up out of bed anymore. And it just feels like an existential threat to everything that makes us human.
Before you can win, you gotta act like you can win, which means you gotta believe you can win.
Michael Connelly, the best-selling author of The Lincoln Lawyer, now a hit Netflix series, says he's ready for battle.
You kind of feel like a little bit like a David versus a Goliath in this, but we're going to fight the good fight.
OpenAI responding to the lawsuit, saying in a statement, "We respect the rights of writers and authors and believe they should benefit from AI technology and are working to understand their concerns."
These class actions are the beginning of many, many lawsuits. We saw this in the music industry when Napster came along, and there were a lot of lawsuits around peer-to-peer sharing. And then ultimately, Apple and Spotify and Amazon came along, and they ended up licensing the works.
This is just the beginning of the battle, and we're also seeing major retailers like Amazon try to control the surge in AI-generated content, but this is becoming a very real problem. I've spoken to authors who have seen their entire books copied, maybe a few words changed, but most of the pages duplicated, Robin, and they have no idea how that was done. They believe that it was AI-generated.
As you said, it's just the beginning.
Yep.
Stay tuned. All right, Rebecca, thank you.
Okay. So once again, the question for writers and poets, is AI a threat, a collaborator, or a tool? I think that's a pretty easy answer.
Now the lawsuit targeting the company.
So one of the fun facts that I wanted to share with you today is the Turing test. And this was developed in the last century. And basically it is a rating system for software that posited if you can't tell the difference between something human or machine generated, then the software is successful. As an addendum, the prevailing wisdom is that in some arenas, it really wouldn't matter if the audience knew if something was human or machine generated. But in other areas, it really would make a difference. I also learned about researcher Margaret Bowden, and she put forth the idea that if a brilliant work like that of a famous composer or author was presented to the world as an AI creation rather than a human one, we would consider it apparently creative rather than just creative. And so in essence, we as humans will tend to prefer biological artists rather than artificial ones. And for instance, here's the case of an orangutan, Nonja, up there in the right-hand corner, whose artwork was a real sensation until it was found out that she was a monkey and not a human artist that was making the work. And it fell out of favor. So some reasons not to worry. First of all, the imagery generated by a machine tends to be less interesting. Think of Frida Kahlo, for instance. It's hard to imagine a machine generating work as quirky, unusual, and personal, and that is still hugely popular years after its creation. Oops. Also, we crave the physical. As the world has gone increasingly online, art forms such as sculpture, pottery, and textiles have become much more popular and valued. Now, here's an example of an art form done in partnership with AI, put together by an artist named Rafiq Anadol. I first saw his work earlier this year at the Getty Museum during a Prop 28 gathering. It was up on the screen, unexplained, yet we were all mesmerized and wondering what it was and who made it. Let's watch this video from the Metropolitan Museum of Art so you can get a feel for the images he generates via photo sources and the algorithms that he writes. Wasn't that interesting? That was just the kind of screen I was sitting in front of and enjoying. So with permission, Rafiq Anadol fed source material to the AI, which in turn created the artwork. He has also done work with the Disney Hall. He did a project where he imagined what do buildings dream about, and then he projected the imagery onto the skin of the outside of that building. And he's also worked with nature, where he doesn't do time lapse, but he does multiple images of nature morphing in and out and blending together. And he just opened a work at the Sphere in Las Vegas, which is called Machine Hallucinations, and it'll be running there through January 2024. So this artist regards AI definitely as a tool or a brush that he controls. So his challenge is in controlling that brush well through his team's programming. And he refers to his work as data sculptures. So you can be the judge. Is his work a threat, a collaborator, or a tool in the arts? Moving on, let's talk about how the arts can assist AI. So a woman by the name of Joy Buolamwini is the founder of the Algorithmic Justice League, and she has used art to explore coding bias that stems from its designers. Here's a video clip that explains a bit more.
During my first semester at MIT, I got computer vision software that was supposed to track my face. It didn't work until I put on this white mask. I'm thinking, all right, what's going on here? Is it the lighting conditions? Is it the angle at which I'm looking at the camera, or is there something more? That's when I started looking into issues of bias that can creep into technology.
Our ideas about technology that we think are normal are actually ideas that come from a very small and homogeneous group of people.
Vast amounts of data at incredible speeds.
Everybody has unconscious biases, and people embed their own biases into technology.
This kid got stopped as a result of facial recognition misidentification, and then used that as justification to search you. This is an innocent child.
Racism is becoming mechanized.
Systemic issues are only going to be hardwired into new technologies.
It's not just face classification, it's any data-centric technology.
Every day, we are all being scored.
Who gets hired? Who gets housing?
I am making predictions for your life right now.
The people who own the code deploy it on other people, and there is no accountability.
Management and Atlantic Towers wanted to install the facial recognition software. Pretty much turn this place into Fort Knox.
The technology is being rapidly adopted, and there are no safeguards.
We are socially controlled in a way that we don't see.
Technology that analyzes faces could be biased, but the company is pushing it anyway.
What demographic is it most effective on?
White men.
Show me that it's going to be fair, that it's legal, before you put it out. That's what we don't have yet.
It's going to take people coming together, striving for justice in this age of automation.
So I highly recommend that documentary, which is currently on Netflix. And it really points out that we need to be so mindful about the bias that is built into AI and its programming. So again, is it a threat, collaborator, or tool in this sense? There are also those who are exploring how AI can help us to create new art forms. So one example is a recent exhibit titled Recoding Cryptech. And the artist challenged what is the universal subject, i.e. white, male, and able-bodied, using technology in their art installation. Another example is Borderless by TeamLab, which uses an interactive experience using technology related to forming connections with other people. So in these two cases, as an artistic medium, is AI a threat, a collaborator, or a tool? Then there's the notion of, can AI practitioners and artists work together? Can we have discussions about diversity, equity, ethics, and social justice now at the outset? Also, can we use how the arts expand traditional notions of what it means to be human, which are often taken for granted in technological innovation? I believe in the near future, there needs to be meaningful discussions around several issues. First, privacy. How do we take it back, and how much of it do we give away? Remuneration. How do we use and compensate creators fairly so that they keep on creating and don't just stop? When it comes to intellectual property, how do we protect it when the barn doors are wide open and it is so inexpensive to catalog and store? Canada just recently passed Bill C2-27, and it did that to establish a voluntary code of conduct for AI. So companies such as BlackBerry and TELUS have signed on already, although there are some companies that are vigorously resisting the very idea. So speaking of codes of conduct, if they don't currently exist, how do we begin to create them and use them to protect our students? And here's a clip that relates to that.
I bought this for $79, thinking it was the work of a talented artist. But a robot made it. AI software called Midjourney, created by David Holz. It's one of several image rendering programs used by millions.
We're giving you this machine that can kind of help you imagine anything you want.
His program learns the rough rules of art by scanning images on the internet. Type in a description of any picture you want.
Like, I want a blue dog in the style of Art Deco.
And boom.
How do you respond to the idea that this is somehow a counterfeit form of artistic expression?
Well, we're not really selling art. We have this community that's playing with this technology. Is something new? Is it not new? I think we have a lot of social stuff already for dealing with that. The art community already has issues with plagiarism. I don't really want to be involved in that.
I think you might be.
I might be.
The way he sees it, Holz and his 18-person team have built a way to augment creativity. I showed my piece to an art expert.
And be honest, I won't be offended.
I'm being honest with you. It's definitely digitally created.
She says using tech is fine as long as we're transparent about it.
The user should be warned. If you still choose to buy it, that's up to you.
Now, I've come to Seattle to talk to the man who made this.
Anthony Edwards, trained as an art director, showed me how easy it is.
And how about like Vampire City Impressionist watercolor? Couple holding hands. Whoa.
He says he doesn't sell pieces anymore. Right now, he's using Midjourney to visualize hip-hop performers who died young as they would look if they'd lived to old age.
The godlike power to commission any artist in history.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
Then I showed him what I'd brought.
So is this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is this art? Do we consider this art?
Yeah.
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 And are you the artist?
Yeah.
But he did not paint it. He typed words into an app.
What responsibility do you think you have to say to someone like me, hey, you know what, this was kicked out by a piece of AI?
On the one hand, I feel like I do owe some. On the other hand, I kind of feel like if you like it, you like it.
David Holz admits he's not totally sure what he's even created.
You're going to watch it develop over time.
There are some things we know and there are some things we don't know. The challenging thing, the interesting thing is how do we use it to make people better?
Jake, this brings up all kinds of legal questions. Number one, in this case, who owns the images that AI is producing?
Well, listen, this is the really complicated thing. I mean, the way this software works, you cannot trace from the renderings back to any one image in particular in court. But in a new lawsuit against a similar piece of software, Getty Images says scanning images in its collection violates copyright. Quite likely, Lester, the courts and art historians are going to have to figure this one out.
This is all mind-bending for me. All right, Jake, thanks very much.
Okay.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top.
Okay, thanks, Lester. I'm with him. It's mind-bending. And I really enjoyed that reporter because he really kind of held the interviewee's feet to the fire when they were playing with moral relativism. Well, I think it's okay. I don't know who should get it. I'm not sure. So he really pressed them on that point.
Top stories and.
So as we near the conclusion, and this is what I do in the in-person presentation, I have people visit with each other and think about like, what's one new thing that I gained from this presentation, right? So hopefully there's one new thing that you didn't know about or learn more about. And then how are you going to use that information as a teacher or as in leadership going forward? All right, let's take off. Nope, not going to do that. So I'm closing with another quote, which I'm playing devil's advocate here, but this is from the composer Igor Stravinsky. A good composer does not imitate, he steals. So we could unpack that for quite a while. But again, as we're thinking about, what are the issues and where do we go from here? I like to ponder quotes like that. So I thank you for your kind attention. My email address is there, also our Instagram and the webpage where you can find all of what we have up online. And also I want to thank Slide Carnival for the design of these slides. They're based on the work of Henri Matisse, and I thought they were fun. And the story or the game, 2 Truths and a Lie. Well, this is 3 funny things in one, or no, 3 scary things in one, kind of cute, that have to do with AI. So in the top left, a golem from Jewish folklore. You can look that up if you don't know what that is. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Pandora, all of which were artificially created by man and turned loose, or not necessarily by man, by gods, and turned loose, and what happens. And then you have Dwayne Johnson. So one of those online creators, like the fellow that was in that last piece, did The Rock as all the Disney princesses. So that's kind of cute and funny. But of course, I guess my point is that rather than being entertained or seduced by the funny or lighter aspects of AI, let's look at all of it, eyes wide open, looking for transparency, looking for fairness, looking for morals and ethics surrounding the use. And one of the fun little things that I found when I was researching this is that the Alan Parsons Project back in the 70s did a whole album envisioning music in the iRobot world. So based on the book iRobot. So I'll just play just a tiny little bit here. But it's like, basically, what would the music sound like? So that's kind of wild. And, this was done, I believe, in the 70s, them trying to envision what the future would be like. And that's not exactly what our music sounds like today. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting. And let me click through my reference. So I looked at 9 different online articles that are mostly 2023. But of course, 6 months from now, this presentation will be dated. There's the rest of them. I also looked at the books and stories that I mentioned, and I talked with my husband, Mr. Higgins, who ran a science fiction convention for many years in Canada and knows a great deal about security and privacy. So we're talking about that in terms of AI. And then finally, lots of videos. There were 9 videos total in this presentation. And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me.